You are just waiting for it. The day your narcissistic co-parent finally convinces your child that you are the problem, and your child looks at you and says, I don't want to come over anymore. And what makes it even scarier, it's not just your child. It can feel like they're slowly convincing everyone in your child's life, teachers, coaches, even extended family, that you're the difficult one, that you're the unsafe one, that you're the reason everything is so hard all the time. And if you're hearing this and your chest is tightening a little, I want you to know something. That fear makes sense. And if you don't want to keep carrying that fear alone, quietly, privately, trying to piece together what's happening, book a strategy session with me. It's one focused, confidential call where we can look at your exact situation, what your child is saying or doing, what patterns point to early alienation, and what to do next so you can protect your bond without escalating things. If you're ready for clarity and a plan, book a strategy session using the link in the description. Okay, now let's get really specific today because you don't need more content, you need a map. By the end of this, you're going to have real clarity on what parental alienation is, how it typically starts in high conflict co-parenting, and the early signs that most parents miss, and what you can do right now to prevent it from taking root without starting a war and without becoming the kind of parent you don't even recognize. Pause and take a breath because you don't need to be louder than your ex. You need to be steadier than the story that they are telling. I've personally witnessed this go both ways. I've seen what happens when a parent shows up steady, well-adjusted, emotionally grounded, and deeply connected to their child, even when the other parent is manipulating the narrative. And it's almost unbelievable to watch because when a child has one consistent, safe, regulated parent, they start to pull out of the fog. They start to trust their own experience again. They begin to see each parent for who they are, over time, in age-appropriate ways, without you ever having to say one negative word about the other parent. And I've also seen the other side. I've seen what happens when a safe parent can't get a handle on their anxiety, their fear, their reactivity, that constant bracing for what's coming next. Not because they're bad, but because they're overloaded and alone. And in that version, the child gets pulled further into the manipulation, not necessarily because the other parent is winning, but because the system keeps rewarding the loudest story and failing the parent who's safe but ungrounded. If you're sitting there thinking, that's me, I'm the safe parent, but I feel unsteady, I want you to hear this. This is workable. This is not a character flaw. It's a skills and support problem. And when you build steadiness, you change the entire emotional physics of this situation. So let's talk about parental alienation so that you can catch it early before it gets deep. Let's define it in a way that's actually going to help you. Parental alienation is a process, not usually a single event, where a child is influenced to distance from, distrust, or reject one parent. And I'm calling it a process because we want to catch it early, before it gets severe. So instead of only thinking about what it looks like when alienation has fully taken root, I want you to think in terms of early indicators. Like, is my ex slowly turning my child against me? Early on, it can look very subtle. And if you respond the wrong way, usually by panicking, over-explaining, interrogating, or shutting down, you can accidentally help it deepen. But if you respond the right way, steady, connected, emotionally safe, you can keep it from taking hold. So here's the framework I want you to use. When these behaviors show up occasionally, we treat it as a signal. When they become frequent or rigid, especially around exchanges, that's when it's starting to take root. And if you're hearing that and thinking, okay, how do I know which one it is? Good. It means that you're taking this seriously without spiraling. Now let's talk about the early signs to watch for. Not to obsess, but to orient. And just to calm your nervous system a little more, you're not looking for proof here. You're looking for patterns. Here are some early signs that the other parent may be trying to pull your child away from you or turn them against you. First, your child starts making big, absolute statements about you. Not things like, I'm mad at you, but you never, you always, everything is your fault, you don't love me, that sort of thing. Second, your child repeats claims about you that don't match reality, especially about the past. Like suddenly they know that you abandoned them, or you never wanted them, or you did something you didn't do. Third, your child shows loyalty pressure or secrecy. They say things like, don't tell mom I said this, or dad said I'm not supposed to talk about it, or they get really tense like they're managing information. Fourth, your child rejects your home specifically, not just the rules in your home. They say, this isn't my home, I don't belong here, I don't want to come back, or they act like being close to you is unsafe. Fifth, there's a noticeable shift in warmth or connection that feels abrupt. Less eye contact, less affection, less settling in, almost like a wall goes up. Sixth, your child becomes unusually anxious about normal parenting choices. They question your decisions like a little attorney. Why do we have to? Who said? Are you allowed to do that? Or they seem worried that you'll get in trouble for being a normal parent. And seventh, you see a predictable pattern around transitions. Right before exchanges or right after, your child's behavior spikes. Anger, coldness, anxiety, acting out, or they seem emotionally different, like they are carrying stress that isn't theirs. Let's pause. I want you to think frequency, rigidity, and whether your child can still reconnect. If you're seeing one or two of these signs once in a while, and your child can still soften, repair, and reconnect with you, that's usually an early signal. But if you're seeing several things happening at once, rigid statements, secrecy, and a big shift in connection, and it's getting worse around exchanges, that's when it's starting to take hold. And that's exactly why we respond early. You don't have to wait for it to get severe. Prevention starts at the first signal, and it gets more urgent as these patterns stack up. And if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm seeing the early signs and I don't want to wait until it gets worse so you can get ahead of it instead of reacting later, that's exactly what we do in a strategy session. You can book a strategy session using the link in the description. All right, now that we know what to watch for early, let's talk about how these dynamics typically work, so you can stop blaming yourself and start responding strategically. Here's how parental alienation starts in high conflict co-parenting situations. Alienation usually builds through repetition, emotional consequences, and loyalty pressure. Let's talk about repetition first. A child hears the same narrative over and over, not always as a direct statement like your mom is bad. Sometimes it's 1,000 tiny signals: sighs, eye rolls, sarcastic comments. Oh, of course your dad would do that, that sort of thing. Second is emotional consequence. If your child shows happiness about you and the other parent responds with sadness, rage, withdrawal, or punishment, even subtly, the child learns being close to mom costs me, or talking about dad is dangerous, and they start editing themselves. And that's when you start noticing the weird shift. Your child comes back guarded or rehearsed or like they're checking you. And third is the loyalty pressure. This is the loyalty bind, where your child feels like they have to choose a side to keep someone emotionally safe. And kids will often protect the parent who feels less stable, not because they love them more, but because their nervous system reads that that parent is the bigger risk. So if you're the steady one, you may become the one that your child feels safe in rejecting. I know that hurts. So let's pause on that. Because if you misunderstand this, you will take it personally, and then you'll react from pain. And pain-based reactions are like fuel to high conflict dynamics. Now, let's talk about the most important part: prevention, helping your child build their inner voice and make your home the safe landing spot. Because if you're in this, you don't need more theory. You need something that you can say tonight. Prevention isn't about proving your ex wrong. It's about making your relationship with your child resilient. So we're going to be focusing on two things here: helping your child strengthen their inner voice and making your home the safe place where they can land. Let's start with their inner voice. It is your job to respond with curiosity, not defense. When your child says something loaded, something that feels like it came straight out of your ex's mouth, your instinct will be to defend, to explain, to correct. But that can accidentally make your child feel like they have to pick a side. And that is exactly what the loyalty bind needs. So we're not going to feed it. Instead, we're going to practice this. Wow, that's a big feeling. I want to understand what made you feel that way. Then listen for the emotion underneath the words. Because the words might be borrowed, but the emotion is real. And when you meet the emotion, the script starts to loosen. If you need a line that keeps you steady, use this. You're allowed to have feelings here. I can handle them. That sentence builds safety, and safety builds attachment. Second, you need to be the safe landing spot that your child needs, which means you don't punish the messenger, your child, and you don't interrogate after visits, because your child is reading you constantly, your face, your tone, your energy. And if your child brings you something painful and you react with shock or rage or sarcasm or even frantic over-explaining, your child learns that I can't bring this truth to you. So keep it simple. That sounds like something you heard. What do you think about it? Or, that's a lot for a kid to carry. You don't have to solve the adult stuff. And then, this part is huge, you create reconnection rituals after exchanges. Not a debrief, a ritual. So that could be a snack together, a short walk, a show, a bedtime routine. Because your child's nervous system needs to be able to predictably say, we're back, we're okay, and that is what it feels like to land at home. And yes, you can also document patterns, privately and calmly, not to obsess, but to stay grounded. You can write down dates, phrases, behaviors, reactions at exchanges. You want to keep it brief, 1 or 2 lines. You don't need to go down a nightly rabbit hole with this. Because part of what makes this dynamic so destabilizing is the self-doubt. So documentation is not about warfare, it's about reality. It helps you make sure that you are grounded and you can get the right support when you need it. Take a breath. You don't need to be perfect here. You just need to be consistent. Steadiness beats dramatic. Steadiness beats charming. Steadiness beats chaos. And if you're seeing the early signs and you don't want to wait until it gets worse, book a strategy session. It's a private, judgment-free conversation, and you don't have to have all the answers. We'll talk about what you're seeing, what your biggest pressure points are, and what kind of support makes the most sense for your situation. You'll leave with clarity on your next step, so you can stop spiraling and start moving forward. Because your child doesn't need you to win a battle. They need you to stay reachable. Book a strategy session, and let's get you supported.